Number 9 Mizzou against number 25 Texas A&M. Texas A&M 2-point favorite. The over-under I have is 2 since they joined the SEC together references. You want to feel old, Will?
Again, let's do it.
Year 13 of these teams being in the SEC. Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
2012, they joined. It is currently 2024, last I checked. Look, if that doesn't make you feel old, nothing will. That's wild to me. There are kids in high school who are too young to remember when Mizzou and Texas A&M were in the Big 12.
Yeah.
How about that?
That's crazy, yeah. Ryan Williams among them.
Right? Ryan Williams does not.
He'd be 2007, so he would have been 5, I guess, when that happened. Yeah. So
he's got vague memories.
Yeah.
He's got like vague memories of Ryan Tannehill playing in the Big 12 or in Chase. Now he doesn't remember Chase Daniel. There's no way. Oh my God. That's crazy. So we're gonna blink probably, and the same thing is going to be true with Texas and Oklahoma about like, oh, hey, like kids in high school, they don't remember when they were in the Big 12. So my advice, follow the wise words of Kenny Chesney. Don't blink. Mm-hmm. Okay. Simple as that. But the side-by-side of these two programs is fascinating, both historically as SEC members and currently as it relates to what we will see on Saturday. A&M is 54-45 against the SEC since joining. Mizzou 48-51 against the SEC.
One of them has 2 division
titles. Argue,
not the one you'd think.
Yeah, like that's a little bit tough because, you know, like you could argue A&M, there's no doubt A&M had it tougher being in the West than the East. Yeah. I mean, let's just call it what it is. So like, I don't know that it's fair to just be like, oh, well, A&M had 2 division titles and therefore it's or that Mizzou had 2 division titles. Therefore it's significantly better than A&M, because if you look at the record against AP top 25 teams, since they joined the SEC, A&M 22-34, 39% win percentage. All right. Mizzou 14-33. That's like essentially 1 fewer AP top 25 win a year. Take that for what it is. AP top 25 finishes as SEC members. A&M at 4, Mizzou at 3. AP top 10 finishes as SEC members. A&M 2, Mizzou 2. And then if you really want to get into some of the brag stats, NFL draft picks as SEC members, so meaning go back to the 2013 NFL draft. We're talking about guys that at least spent 1 year in the SEC in 2012. A&M, 45 of those, Mizzou, 35. And the all-important head-to-head, since joining the SEC, 2 wins for A&M, 2 wins for Mizzou. So kind of fitting that this game feels a bit like a coin flip in year 13 in the SEC matchup number 5 between these two teams in the SEC. And I bring that up because this is supposed to be the best version of Mizzou since it joined the SEC, right? I mean, we're talking about highest preseason rankings since the Chase Daniel era, and that's why we can say something like that. And this was supposed to be A&M building things back up after paying $76 million to fire a head coach. I mean, that's call what it is. We don't have any losses to confirm that Mizzou is less than what we thought it was in the preseason, but I would argue the eye test tells a different story, okay? There are some troubling stats with Mizzou, and I didn't necessarily have them handy post-Vandy. I don't know why that rhymed, but it did. But think about this. This is a team that is 57th in yards per play with a schedule that started off super favorable. I mean, Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, and Vandy, all of those games at home. They're sitting there at 58th in red zone touchdown percentage, which that's important, especially if you don't have a kicker like Harrison Mevis anymore. Just saying. And they're at 93rd in FBS in penalty yards per game. Not great. 102nd in FBS with 10 passing plays of 20 yards. Maybe a touch skewed because Mizzou has already had the bye. So sometimes in those stats, you get the teams that have played 5 games and, you know, as opposed to those who played 4, you get what I'm saying. Brady Cook is 71st in America in passer rating, even with all of those weapons and even with all of those favorable matchups that he's had so far. And he's only been sacked 4 times. So I don't think I can trust Mizzou to go on the road and beat a decent team right now, because I think that's what A&M is. I agree or disagree. A&M, decent.
Yeah,
hot take, right?
I think they're like mid to mid plus. Yeah, decent's pretty perfect word. They're like 25th. I think that's about right there.
This is kind of an interesting battle too. If we're like, If we're doing SEC power rankings, the winner of this game, I think it's spot number 5 in the SEC. Like that's the big time high stakes game in that way. But like at the same time, I think you look at this matchup and you see a decent defense. That's what A&M has. It's been better against the pass than against the run. Something that was to be expected with those edge rushers, that defensive line presence, and what they were going to be able to do rushing the passer. A little bit more of a work in progress on the interior, post Edgerrin Cooper era, all those things. But a decent offense, halfway decent offense, I guess, that A&M has with an unknown quarterback situation right now. And the thing that it's been doing best is the thing that you would hope a decent team does best, and that is win the turnover battle. A&M +6 in the turnover battle in the 2 SEC games that it's played so far. I think after a breakout game from Nick Scorton, I think he and Shamar Stewart, I think they're going to frustrate Brady Cook. I think that Mizzou is going to lack offensive rhythm, playing in that atmosphere, playing on the road. Like I said, I can't trust Mizzou right now, so I'm going to go A&M to win this one, 27-20.
I think for this one, right, we've had this long conversation about Mizzou and what are they and what are they, prepared to be. And I think at this point, to your point, you're looking at a number 9 ranking, but you're also looking at a team that struggled with Boston College and Vanderbilt. And any team in the history of us doing this podcast that struggled with Boston College and then Vanderbilt at any point would have some questions. Now, the good news for Mizzou is those were wins. It's better to learn in wins than it is losses. The, not so good news is you still have this matchup at Bryant-Denny Stadium that we saw can fluster, even the best teams in America. And you want to be in a 12-team playoff and in a place where losing the Alabama game, if you so happen to do that, not to plan as if we're losers, but if you lose to Alabama, not a radical concept, you can still control your own destiny. This is kind of the game that I would circle on the schedule, taking out a Mizzou puke on your shoes loss, which is still very possible. You need to win this game to be a serious team.
Couldn't agree more.
Unfortunately.
Yep.
I don't want to do anything controversial like believe in a top 10 team again, but if you want to be a top 10 team, you got to beat Texas A&M with a first-year head coach, okay? Like, that's just how it is. I'm sorry. I know this is a radical concept to a lot of people, but I think that if you are going to be a top 10 team and you're going to be real and you're going to, beat the accusations of the F word that we talk about, you're undefeated. So none of that matters. You're in the top 10. You've made it this far. You need to win this game. Texas A&M has a go ahead.
I think that's such a great point. And I think it's context that whether Mizzou fans want to admit it or not, they are accepting going into this one. And they will feel so dejected if they lose a game like this, knowing that if you can't win a game like this, you don't deserve to be part of playoff conversations until further notice, until you, maybe somehow you turn into a different version of yourself. And if you win at Bryant-Denny or something like that later in the season, maybe if you win at UMass and you overcome the Ryan Bamford effect that we will see in that building that day, then we can talk. But like in all seriousness, you're right. And not to go full Ari Wasserman, who has had himself a whale of a time on Twitter the past couple of days defending this point, but I don't want to have those conversations about Mizzou if they lose a game like this, because at the midway point of the season, there will be nothing that we have seen in 2024 to suggest that it is worthy of that. So you're right. From a stakes perspective, I think that is totally fair to say about this Mizzou team, even if this isn't a pseudo playoff eliminator.
And I think that's the thing, is that we have been consistently pro Mizzou post new giving up the reins of the offense. I think that we very early said, okay, Mizzou, you need to do this to take the next step. They did that. We went, good job. Congratulations. You're now a good team. You beat Ohio State, which is awesome. Great job. Do you want to stay here, or do you want to rent an Airbnb here? Do you want to pay rent, or do you want to pay an Airbnb? Ideally, you want to own. You want to be in a house. You want to have your little territory. But in the SEC, that's hard. Do you want to be here long term? Do we take you seriously? That's the question. I think that's a fair.
Do you want a Nick Saban Verbo?
Exactly. Yeah. Do you want, whatever company, should get into specifics because they should sponsor us for me to do that. Exactly. But point being, that's the key. I will know most of what I need to know about the University of Missouri, after this game. Just to be honest with you, I don't have much to say. I think you guys should win this game, so I'm going to pick you. I'm going to say, if you have this quarterback that's been there forever, if you have this offensive coordinator, if you have what is still, I probably believe, is the best wide receiver in the SEC. I think Trey Harris has made a case, but I still think we'd probably take Luther Burden.
Debatable. Because, and I only say that as someone who I thought the gap between those two guys, very different players. I didn't think it was that significant.
That guy has shown up.
And and Luther Burden has had, I think, a disappointing start for his incredibly high standard. And if you are going to be that dude that we're talking about in the All-American conversations, if you want to be considered for the Blitnikoff Award, if you want to be the driving force behind a potentially special season, you show it in a game like this, because now is the time. And that's kind of my whole thing with Mizzou. Like, if it's going to happen for Brady Cook this year, it's going to show up, and he's going to handle that really good A&M pass rush, and we'll see that play out. But again, like, I need to see it before I can buy in now.
And I think your point about comparing these two teams is so correct, right? It's like, on one side, Mizzou has had working in their favor the SEC East, which has been pretty historically weak since they've been there. You know, it was kind of right after Urban Meyer. It was kind of in the middle of the transition for Georgia. Steve Spurrier was on the way out at South Carolina. So, like, they walked into a pretty good situation. Now, A&M, their benefit is they have more money than the rest of the teams combined, apparently. Well, now Texas is here. Wait. So they have more money than anything. And what have they done? Right? They hired Jimbo Fisher. They did all this stuff. And it ended up pretty similarly in the same place. What you can't do, again, I feel like I'm saying this for the second week in a row, what you can't do is let this team go beat you right now, because they just got a first-year head coach in. They've already done kind of the hard part, right, which is building a pass rush, which is solidifying the offensive line. That's why I was a little bit higher on A&M than a lot of people in the preseason, right? And I should have stuck with my gut and picked them last week, but I wanted to see the Taylor Green finishing drive, and boy, Taylor Green versus Nick Gordon went exactly how it probably should have, right? But point being, like, they're very gap sound. They're a very well-coached team. I really like Texas A&M, and more than a lot of people coming into the year. That being said, if this version of Texas A&M, that's just like they hired the kind of brainiac, all shucks guy, not the huge flashy hire. They're doing things like the smart analytic way, and they've been like solid in the portal, but probably lost more than they gained when Jimbo left, just by a little bit. Like, Gordon's great. Like, I've not taken away from that. But when you lose the receivers, when you lose that type of stuff, like, so point being, you know, I think that you can't let A&M say, okay, we're at equal footing with you, we're better than you, because that just kind of makes it feel like, if you're Mizzou, this is the best team we've had since, to your point, probably the Big 12. Or good.
Yeah, I mean, coming into the year, like, that's definitely the case. And obviously what we saw from them in 13 and 14 suggested that, you know, we were maybe too low on them coming into the year. I'd argue, you know, the team that, you know, was picked to finish, what were they picked to finish? Like, dead last in the East coming into 13, and then they end up winning the division title.
5-7.
I'd argue we had a reason. Yeah. Like, we had reasonable reason to be doubting them. Maybe a little bit different with 14, but yeah, this is a pivotal game, a really, really pivotal game. Remains to be seen kind of what this A&M quarterback picture is going to shake out and look like. Maybe Mike Elko opts to follow the Vandy game plan, which is a crazy thing to say out loud, and have Marcel Reed with a lot of these quarterback design runs. And maybe they're going to be able to try and control the tempo that way. TBD. Again, we're recording these preview pods before injury reports, availability reports come out, so something to keep in mind as well. But I think it's fitting that we're split on this one. Could definitely see this game
really
going
quick.
either way.
The reason why I like this team is a little bit more than that team is because I always kind of knew in the back of my head that Matty Mock was not going to take you to the promised land. We could see that with Brady Cook and Luther Burden. We will see it this weekend. That's the thing. Because I'm assuming no one's ever going to beat Bama again until they prove me wrong. I'm wrong. Bama's just going to beat everybody. That's fine. So let's just assume that could be a schedule loss for you guys. You could lose that game and still be a great team that makes the playoff and wins a game or two and maybe even goes farther than that. Let's win this game first. I would say 35-28.
Exactly. 35-28 shootout. That'd be fun. Be really fun.